Do 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 do. All right, and we're live. It's meme time. We're just taking some time to talk about meme ideas and stuff. Citizens United and Hobby Lobby decision and internet censorship are all bad things that are coming to a head on meme time. It's meme time. All right, and we're live. It's meme time, episode 25. I'm your host, Champion, and today we have fairly regular correspondent Ben with us. So,
Howdy.
hey Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
All right, so the main things I want to talk about today are the recent Hobby Lobby decision, and kind of go over Citizens United, since I don't think I've ever talked about that on the show before. And let me cut out the other feed real quick. But yeah, and then the other thing I want to talk about is revisit internet censorship, since it apparently is back in the news with, now there was SOPA, then there was CISPA, now there's apparently a new one called CISA. So that's a thing that is not going away, since the internet is currently the best form of getting information to the masses. The establishment is, of course, trying every way possible to completely get rid of the internet as much as possible. That's still a thing going on. So, Ben, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm glad that we're having an open dialogue here and our words aren't being censored on the internet.
Mm-hmm,
Quite,
glad that that's still a real thing that happens.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny. Every time they start putting together one of these bills to push through, and the whole world gets up in arms about it, or at least lots of people in the U.S. do. Whenever you see something like what happened in Syria, one of the first things they attack is the internet. They take down Twitter, for example, because people are sharing live communication to probably help each other and save their countrymen's lives. And the government knows that's a place to just snip out and destroy that level of communication between people. So every
Yeah,
time they address one of these bills, I just got to think, it's just a matter of time before, they drill deeper.
yeah, and I mean, I've even seen um, that happen to some degree. That's already starting to happen. Like, I know that they're trying to pass this legislation, but I think that along with the oh, what's it called? The internet fast lane that companies like Verizon and
Oh, net
Comcast are
neutrality?
yeah, net neutrality that Comcast and Verizon are trying to push through. Like, I've already seen what looks like, it could be me being completely paranoid, but I've already seen what looks like them trying to push through stuff as far as internet censorship and this net neutrality stuff already, because I've seen certain web pages that are like alternative media pages, and alternate sites have a lot more difficulty loading than pages like Netflix. I understand that, like, when Comcast and companies like that, when 30% of their bandwidth is devoted to Netflix, they're probably trying to provide as much bandwidth as they can to sites like that. But I've seen pages that are like alternative media sites. I've been having a lot of trouble loading them more recently, and at the same time, I've seen stuff on Facebook get censored before. Like, I've posted like random shit where it's like, cat internet memes or whatever, and nothing. I have no trouble posting that, but when I try to post more controversial stuff on Facebook, I seem to have a lot more trouble posting it. Like, I'll have to post it like 2 or 3 times before it actually goes through. So
Um,
I would believe that they're already trying to push stuff like this. They're just not openly doing it. They're just trying to get legislation passed so that they can go back after the fact and like be like, okay, well, now it's legal, so we can do whatever we want to.
that's just Big Brother Facebook looking out for you, champ. He's trying to make sure you
Hmm.
don't wind up on a list.
Right, exactly. Make sure that the government's not going to come after me. They've got my best interests in mind, obviously.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, but the first thing I want to talk about was like I said, I don't think. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is I wanted to hype up my music video of the week. I was listening to Erskine Overnight, which is a website that's on or a web or a radio program that's on Texas Liberty Radio at like late nights on I think Friday or Saturday night, and the theme song for Erskine Overnight is the song by Bouche from the early '90s by Bouche called "Sweet Dreams," which is one of my absolute favorite early '90s electronic songs. Now, Ben and I were discussing this beforehand, and he asked me why I didn't like, if I actually like this music. And I guess my question to you, as because I know you said before that oh, what's the name of that band? Like Dub, what's the name of the band? Sweet Dub or whatever.
Sweet, sweet dub.
No, but it's one of the newer EDM bands that you said, or Bass Nectar.
Yeah.
You said is one of your favorite bands. So I guess my question to you is, what's the difference between Bass Nectar and like early '90s electronic dance music?
There's about 20 years of musical evolution between those.
Okay, I can agree with that, but that doesn't mean like Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and bands from the '60s are and even classical music. Like there's hundreds of years of evolution there, but that music's still good.
Yeah, I mean,
Touche, right?
touche, touche. I'm just saying that at the dawn of its infancy, electronic music wasn't that great. You certainly have a lot of poppy singles that got really popular, and it's okay to like it. I was just surprised that was the musical intro, but let's
Well,
go
I
ahead
mean,
and see
it's
if we
it.
can let the guest hear it. And
Well, I'll try and play it. Like I said, or I think as has been happening on previous episodes, I haven't had any luck playing YouTube videos, but I'll give it a shot, and otherwise I'll post it along on the YouTube channel and on my website memeideas.com along with the video, and people can judge for themselves how good the music is. Okay, well it didn't look like anything posted, so I'll just post it on the website. People can be the
I mean,
judge
I
for
can hear it. I can enjoy the '90s poppiness of it.
yeah. I mean that's the thing is like there's a lot of good '90s music. Like people go apeshit about '80s music, and it's like I mean I agree with them that there's a lot of good '80s music too, but like that stuff at this point I feel like is overplayed. So I'm just trying to bring back. We're in the year 2000 in the 2000 decade. '80s music was like the hot thing, was like the hot comeback thing, and so now that we're in the 2010s, I'm trying to bring back '90s music as the hot comeback thing.
I went to my 10-year high school reunion this
hmm
past December, and they played music from the late '90s, early 2000s when I was in school. Talk about the worst music ever.
I mean, yes, I agree with you. Like, but again, I think that's because it's
Nelly.
overplayed too. Like, there's good late '90s music too. It's just like that. I feel like is overplayed too. I think in our case is probably because we grew up with that music. So like I've heard that music a million times. So some of it is really old at this point.
I got sick of Sublime recently with how much 101X plays Sublime. I can't even enjoy it anymore. It's
Yeah, I
just
mean,
too much.
I was never a huge fan of Sublime, and again, that's because I think that's more because like there were, going through college, like every single college kid is obsessed with Sublime. So I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Sublime, but like I understand that their music's all right. It's just like I've heard Sublime, like you said, I've heard Sublime so many freaking times that I don't think I could ever get into it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that you know, more so than late '90s and early 2000s music, I think that early '90s rock and electronic music is due for a comeback. So I'm just doing my part to try and bring back early '90s music.
Okay.
repopularize it for a new generation.
We're gonna love '90s pop music, and we're gonna fucking fight those bastards in Congress. It's gonna be great.
Yes, it's gonna be great, and we're gonna be hyped up to fight those bastards in Congress by listening to early '90s dance music.
You just blew my mind.
So anyways, back to Citizens. Now that we've gotten through that, oh yeah, the other music thing that I want to discuss is my Razzie Award for current popular music that I think is absolutely horrible, and that is that Iggy Azalea song, the Iggy Azalea "I'm So Fancy" song. You know what I'm talking about?
Not sure if I know that one.
I'm so fancy. You already know. Something something from LA to Tokyo. It's
Yeah.
not it's not a real song. Like that's the problem is it's just a woman talking at me for 3 minutes.
The one that goes boom, 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 boom.
I believe so, yeah. Like there's no actual music. It's just like a beat and a woman talking to me, and she says, "I'm so fancy, you already know." Well, if I already know that you're so fancy, what is the point of your song? What exactly are you trying to tell me with this song? If I apparently already know that you're so fancy, that's my
That
question.
that is a good question, Jen. I don't think we're ever going to get an answer for such a riveting question.
Well, yeah, I don't think I need an answer. I think that the song just needs to go away because it's a terrible, like I said, it's a terrible song.
Yeah. Um, so,
Okay,
okay.
now that we've hashed that out, we can go to Citizens United.
Citizens United.
Mm-hmm. So this is something that a lot of people have had a big problem with for a long time, and I haven't really weighed in on it before because I haven't felt like I've had enough information to discuss it. But basically, the Citizens United decision, as I understand it, because I still don't feel like I have a whole bunch of good information about it, but as I understand, the Citizens United decision was a decision that the Supreme Court that came down, and there was like the Citizens United group, which was, I guess, the first super PAC where people were basically giving unlimited donations, and so someone sued against it because it was, I guess, a way to kind of funnel money into political donations without actually making political donations to a specific candidate, since there are donation limits. There's like a 2,500 individual donation limit on individual political candidates, and so the ruling basically came down that corporations, as I understand, that corporations are people. This was the decision that made it that corporations are people, that people can, that free speech, that money equals free speech, and so corporations and individuals can give unlimited political donations to these 501c4, I believe, basically nonprofit organizations that are political organizations but are not directly affiliated with a particular candidate. So like people can give money to like Rand Paul um, uh, super PACs, and give money to like Hillary Clinton super PACs, and they can give as much money as they want to, as long as the super PACs don't directly coordinate with the political candidates. And I think one of the fishy things that was going on is that, yeah, the political candidates were trying to skirt the law by not directly coordinating with these super PACs, but at the same time they were basically like going on TV and saying stuff, like basically kind of giving direction in the stuff that they said to these super PACs, and the super PACs were kind of saying their own stuff, and so there was like over media there was a back and forth between the candidates and the super PAC without them directly talking to each other, and that was like the shady thing that was going on. So that is kind of the background on it. And originally, I was in agreement with a lot of the people like Stephen Colbert and I think Wolfpack, and I think there's at least a couple other PACs where they've created super PACs to kind of show how ridiculous they think super PACs are, and they've created super PACs for the sole purpose of trying to get rid of all the more politically motivated super PACs. And so originally I was kind of in agreement with them, and that, like, the ultimate goal of a lot of these groups is to try to get money out of politics. But I've sort of come around to the idea of super PACs and the idea that I think that money has always been an influence on political organizations, has always been, like, even before super PACs were really popular, money was already being diverted to what, even if it wasn't directly being diverted, like they wouldn't, a lot of times they wouldn't, political groups wouldn't openly divulge where their money was coming from, and so they would get it from a bunch of shady sources. So people in the establishment and like super wealthy people were able to give money to political candidates either through donations to like charities that the political candidates were involved in, or other shady like backroom ways of getting money to candidates but not actually openly doing it. And the way that I feel about super PACs is that they've brought all of that money, all of that donation basically out into the open. Like, yeah, the super PACs don't have to divulge where their money's coming from, but at the same time it tends to come out that like more conservative leading super PACs are getting their money from like the Koch brothers, and other more right-leaning organizations, and more left-leaning organizations are getting money from like George Soros and his Media Matters group, and like super wealthy left-leaning organizations. So originally I was in agreement with a lot of these people and trying to get the Citizens United decision overturned, but after the fact it seems to me like the decision has ultimately had a good influence, and that a lot of the information that originally people weren't finding out about is coming out of the woodwork, because like these right-leaning super PAC groups are attacking the left-leaning super PAC groups, and a lot of like information that I feel like we weren't originally privy to is now we're finding out about through the media, in that these super PACs are like attacking each other, and they have so much money to attack each other. So my current standing on it is that until I see something really bad happen, I'm in agreement with the Citizens United decision. I think it's ultimately been for the best after seeing it play out for a period of time. Like, yeah, it's really ugly when there are when there are runs for candidacy and elections going on where the super PACs get involved and they just have like really, really ugly smear campaigns against other candidates, but at the same time I feel like the most truthful information is actually coming out, and we're actually finding out all the dirt behind a lot of candidates that we might not previously have found out about. So that's my stance on it currently.
Yeah, I mean, me for one, I've always kind of been against smear campaigns just because I really don't care. I mean, obviously there's some stuff that's not forgivable. Like, if you have a bunch of dead hookers in your motel room, then you probably shouldn't be leading the nation or anything. But if you voted a specific way several years ago and you come out against that, or I don't know, some of this information is important. Some of it is really get carried away with. Like, if a guy cheats on his wife or something, does that mean that he's morally not sound to be able to be a congressman?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying there. Like, I guess the way they feel about that is like if it's something that happened in the past and the candidate has either changed their decision or has improved, that's something where, if a smear campaign comes out, like, I agree with what you're saying about, like, yeah, it probably shouldn't be drug out into the media like someone, like, cheated on their wife, 10 years ago or whatever. But I feel like when stuff like some of that stuff comes out candidates who have easy access to media presence can always come out and kind of defend it. And if it's something that's reasonable, it's probably not very hard for them to defend. And a lot of times it might actually make them look better in the end. But I understand what you're saying in that, like, yeah, some of that stuff is irrelevant and is probably just hurtful to people. But at the same time, there are people like Thad Cochran and some of these establishment politicians like Eric Cantor, who just lost his House majority um, seat and got voted out of office. Like, there are people like that who are incumbents, who have everything on their side. Like, they have a ton of money, they have their incumbency going for them, and they need to get voted out of office, and they're not getting. Previously, they haven't been getting voted out of office, and all of a sudden, now with these super PACs, it allows more fringe candidates who maybe shouldn't hold office but should have their ideas being put into the mainstream discussion, like Tea Party candidates and stuff like that, who previously might not have been able to have a voice, might not have been able to raise enough money to have a voice in politics, and now some of them are either winning primaries or are winning political seats, and whether they're maybe too fringe, ultimately they'll probably, if they're really too fringe, they'll probably either will lose in the general election or will get voted out of office pretty fast. But their voices do deserve to be heard, and their voices are getting heard now. Now that anyone can fund them, and basically give as much money as they want to them.
Yeah, so that was the big change or whatever this go around, right? Is that they're able to they got rid of the limits now and saying that, like what you said earlier, that money is an exercise of free speech and you can spend your money where you want or whatever. I'm reading an article. It's saying that they're with the previous $2,600 per election per candidate limit. Someone could theoretically donate up to about $50,000 previously before this ruling. Now that same individual, due to the aggregate limits, can donate somewhere close to $3.6 million to one person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's certainly a lot of money to follow.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Like, I think that another thing that is at issue is, like, people who have historically controlled the way that the establishment candidates and more left-leaning groups who kind of are in control of the media, like CNN and MSNBC and like Microsoft, Bill Gates, and George Soros with his Media Matters. Like, those are people who have previously, other than maybe like Rupert Murdoch and Fox News, those are people who have previously been in control of what the media shares. And so they have previously been in control of in large part control of the messaging, because they can put as much money as they want to into media campaigns. And now I feel like a lot of the people who are against the Citizens United decision are just people who are unhappy because more right-leaning groups like the Koch brothers actually have a voice in politics, as opposed to them dominating the media conversation. And like, just because they don't like what the Koch brothers stand for and what the Koch brothers are saying, they're trying to shut them out of the conversation by shutting down the Citizens United decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting rid of the limits is a bad thing, simply for the fact that, I mean, $2,600, the previous limit, is still a lot of money for most Americans. That's more than a lot of people make in a month. So it's definitely more than they're going to contribute to a political campaign. But now exactly what you're saying is that these, people with really deep pockets are able to just spin, and influence more people. I think that is overwhelmingly a negative thing.
See, again, like, I think that ultimately the truth comes out. Like, I don't 100% agree with, like, some of the right-leaning groups like the Koch brothers and some of the Tea Party candidates, but I think that I'm probably more in agreement with them than I am with like George Soros and Bill Gates. And so the fact that these people actually have a voice in politics, because yeah, you're right. Individuals probably can't donate even up to the $2,500 individual limit, but when more right-leaning groups that I'm more in agreement with actually have a voice, as opposed to it all being CNN, Koch brothers, Rupert Murdoch, George Soros, who we're gonna, who whether they can donate, whether there's political limits or not, they're going to donate a shit ton of money to their media sources, and they're going to dominate the conversation. Like, I think that it's ultimately for the best that even if you don't 100% agree with like the Koch brothers or some of the more right-leaning groups, I feel like them having a counter voice in the media is probably a good thing overall. So I mean, that's just the way I view it. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like what the Koch brothers stand for, but I feel like them having a counterpoint to a lot of the more left-leaning stuff and like the very mainstream right-leaning stuff like Rupert Murdoch and Fox News is probably a good thing. And like Freedom Works, some of these brand new super PACs that are more right-leaning, I feel like it's a good thing that they have a voice in politics now.
Okay.
So I mean, that's
Sure.
my stance on it. And that's why I wanted to weigh in, because I'm kind of sick of just all the how much vitriol is spouted towards the Citizens United decision, and it's all coming from the same sources. It's all coming from left-leaning groups who get a shit ton of funding. Like, they're not happy about Citizens United, but even though they're not happy about it, they're taking advantage of it to promote their left-leaning arguments at the same time, and they're getting funding from like George Soros and more left-leaning groups. So that's the way I feel about it. Okay, I guess unless you
I
have
have
anything
the
else.
perfect transition slide to go from this to our next story. Just to recap, person, eh.
Okay. Explain how that's a transition slide.
Well, when we talk about Citizens United, there's such a up in arms about, how corporations are being labeled as people and they're giving all the same rights as people. So it's just, since we're going to talk about the Hobby Lobby decision in just a moment, which
Right.
gives people control over birth control, this one, I don't completely agree with it, just because, the fetus has rights and is labeled as the first person. That's just kind of a stab at right-wingers in general. So I could honestly be done with that. But definitely, I think I saw this on Facebook or something and thought it was powerful enough that I remembered it, just because it does kind of illustrate that, this corporate lobby can say, and they're doing something to a religious freedom. They can't be completely corporate, they can't be publicly traded or anything, but they can still be a large industry like Coca-Cola, for example, that's privately held or closely held, and they can influence their will over some random employee that they have and limit their options to do birth control, which I think is not okay.
Okay. So in that regard, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this. That's fair. Let's go ahead and talk about the Hobby Lobby decision, because I think we're in disagreement about that. So, go on, and I guess go ahead and give your opinion, and then I'll give mine. Or I can go first. With the Hobby Lobby decision, so I guess the crux of it is that with the Obamacare mandate, basically, previously, corporations, since corporations and companies are primarily tied into providing healthcare, like healthcare has pretty much been historically directly tied into employment. Then now that Obamacare has come out, Obamacare has kind of mandated that employers have to provide, I guess, have to provide some form of healthcare to their full-time employee, to all their full-time employees. And
Right.
so Hobby Lobby and some other some other corporations have cited kind of a freedom of religion argument, and that they don't feel like they should have to provide funding, or they don't, along with the providing health care to the full-time employees, they shouldn't have to provide coverage for prescriptions that they feel violate their um, their religious beliefs. And so, like, Hobby Lobby still provides, even they took this to the Supreme Court in that they don't want to have to provide funding or healthcare services for people who are using, like, abortifacients, like the morning after pill, and certain forms of birth control. They still provide, as I understand it, 16 forms of birth control, but they aren't providing the government's mandating that corporations have to provide 20 forms of birth control, and they don't want to have to provide the 4 forms of birth control that are more like abortifacients, or that are viewed, I guess, more as abortifacients, and they don't want to have to provide for, like, the morning after pill and stuff. That's my understanding of the Hobby Lobby decision. And it was ruled that they shouldn't have to provide for services that they feel violate their religious beliefs.
Well, this is a good pharmaceutical question for you. Do you feel, because I've even heard these particular drugs can't be classified as, that Hobby Lobby is seeing them as abortifacial drugs when they're really not, in a sense. That, the morning after pill, it's not terminating a pregnancy or anything, it's just preventing the woman from getting pregnant.
Yeah, and you're right about that. Like, I think that, well, I think I side ultimately with Hobby Lobby in the decision. I think that their argument is stupid, and I agree with you in that regard. Like, it's not an abortifacient. It's stupid that they're arguing that it is, because it doesn't cause I mean, if you used it after you were pregnant, it could potentially cause an abortion, but if you're using it the way it's supposed to be used, and, like, after you have intercourse, the day after you have intercourse, you take it to prevent a pregnancy, then you're preventing a pregnancy. You're not causing an abortion.
Yeah.
So you're right about that.
Also, they had some of the, like, UIDs, I think, were on their list.
The IED, the intrauterine devices.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I don't know, that, I guess, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that those are actually abortifacients either. I think, like we already said, they prevent abortions, but they don't actually cause abortions.
Right. So that's one point, but I just don't see why. I mean, I get that these corporations don't want to, they have all these new expenses coming through Obamacare, and they're trying, to me it seems like they're cutting costs and they're just taking the religious ground as a means to an end. It doesn't seem like maybe that's not a fair point, because I don't really see how they would save a ton of money by just not supporting those 4 drugs. But I don't know. It just seems ridiculous to me that this can even be an argument when that choice should be, if you're a female who's working in a corporation and a doctor recommends this kind of birth control and it's compatible, it works well for you, but your company is in charge, not even the insurance company, but the company you work for says that they're not going to cover that just doesn't seem fair to those women.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, I think that the reason that I agree with Hobby Lobby, even though I think that the way that they're going about it is really stupid, is that I don't think that employment should be tied to healthcare to begin with. Like, I understand with, I'm on the fence about Obamacare, like, or Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it. I'm on the fence about it in that I think that there probably should be services provided to people who can't afford healthcare. So, like, I don't think that having the Affordable Care Act in place, I'm not, I'm not against it in the sense that I think that a role of the government should be to provide some form of healthcare to people who otherwise can't afford it or like aren't full-time employees. Again, I don't think that employment should be tied to healthcare. And I mean, we do already have stuff like Medicare and Medicaid, which is kind of supposed to be that already. Is supposed to provide services to people who can't afford it.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily feel like healthcare is a right, but I also don't think that especially in a country as wealthy as America, that there's any reason that people shouldn't have healthcare, whether they can afford it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I really like a lot of parts of ACA. I mean, I myself have some pre-existing conditions that would make it extremely hard for me to get health care, and I was out of a job earlier this year and had to go to the marketplace, and I was able to find a plan that was semi-expensive when you're not working and didn't really cover what I needed it to, which was great. That if I got hit by a bus or something, I guess I would have been covered. Um, but what I really have a problem with the Affordable Care Act is just forcing private citizens into bed with for-profit corporations for the insurance companies to be able to make money and sell insurance.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the problems with the Affordable Care Act is that it was written by the insurance companies. Like they're the ones that are profiting off it. It's a mandate that people have to be a part of in one way or the other, whether they have health insurance through their employers or through like one of the state what's it called, state lotteries or state
Insurance
marketplaces.
pools, yeah.
Yeah, marketplaces, or if they don't have health insurance, they have to pay a fine, which I understand the reason behind it, in that they want to have as many people in the marketplaces in the pools, the insurance pools as possible. And so if you're going to opt out, then you have to pay a fine. You have to help pay into it in some way. So I understand the reasoning behind it, but I also don't agree with it. Like I don't think people should be forced, if they don't want healthcare, they shouldn't be forced to pay for healthcare. And also, I think that if you have the government involved in healthcare, then it allows for decisions like this where, like, if you have the collective paying for healthcare, then you're going to end up with situations like this where the collective gets to be involved in your healthcare. And so, like, if the collective's involved in paying for healthcare, then yeah, they're going to have problems when issues like this come up where they have religious belief citations and they're not happy with it, so now they have a decision in your healthcare. So, I mean, those are things where I have issues with it.
Yeah, um, totally.
And so again, and the other thing I was going to say is like, so again, while I think that the way that Hobby Lobby is going about it is stupid, and I think that they probably, like, I think that their argument is not completely well founded. At the same time, I don't think that, like, if women are like, a lot of the posts that I'm seeing on the other side of the argument are like, well, I want my bosses I don't want my bosses involved in my healthcare. Well, if your bosses are paying for your healthcare, then they have a say in your healthcare all of a sudden. Like, sorry, don't have your corporation pay for your healthcare if you don't want them involved in your healthcare.
I mean, I think I agree with what you were saying earlier, where it should be separated out. I mean, the health insurance that I'm provided through my job now isn't the best in the world. If there was a fair marketplace where I could actually get affordable coverage and I had the option to opt out and receive a little bit of extra salary that I could go into the marketplace and buy my own health care, I think that would be a better solution than saying, okay, you have to have this health care because we're subsidizing it for you.
Right.
And but we also say that you can't have these drugs or those drugs for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think it needs to be separated from employment. I don't think it should have ever. I don't think that healthcare should have ever been tied to employment to begin with, and especially now when it's a mandate, I don't think that it should be tied to employment. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to get these kind of decisions removed from being an issue, is that don't tie healthcare to employment. And so, like, if you want to have marketplaces, that's fine, but don't make employers pay for health insurance.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know. Do we have anything else to talk about in that regard, or is that it?
I just wish we could go out listening to Sweet Dreams. Only that was working.
People should be listening to Sweet Dreams. They should be listening to Hadaway. What is Love, and what's the other song? What's the other song that I love? That I'm a huge fan of from that decade. I don't know. I'll look it up while we're still talking. Okay, so the other thing that I want to talk about is that there's another internet censorship thing coming up. They're still at it with internet censorship. First there was SOPA, then there was CISPA, and now apparently there's a new one called CISA. And basically all it is, it seems to me like all it is that when the government isn't successful in promoting internet censorship with something like one of these bills or net neutrality, then they just wait until all the media frenzy dies down about it, and because there's always a tremendous backlash by the public, they wait for it to die down in the hopes that they can come back and release a new hope that when people aren't paying attention, they can come back and release a new form of internet censorship legislation. That's all it seems to me, and I think it's complete bullshit. I think that people should get up in arms about CISA and should start kicking out some of these incumbent politicians who are gung-ho for it, like Mike Rogers, Lamar Smith, and Nancy. I'm pretty sure Nancy Pelosi's involved in this in some way or another. Just these scumbag incumbent politicians establishment incumbent politicians who are very much gung-ho for this type of internet censorship. I'm very happy that, like, Justin Amash and I believe Rand Paul are more newly elected candidates who are very much vocal about being against this type of internet censorship. So
it's not only just censorship; it's also a full-out surveillance bill. I mean, lots of different parts of this is giving companies, the flexibility they need to participate with PRISM without the legal backlash of it. It's doing immunities for them, so if there is a class action suit and all this is deemed unconstitutional in the future, they're not going to have any punishments for it. It makes it so basically the government can spy on you, the Fourth Amendment gets trampled, it makes every privacy policy you've ever signed a moot point. It is bad news.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. It's not just internet censorship in the form of basically, and I guess another part of the whole thing is I think intellectual property for the most part is a thing of the past, and I think that we need to more or less do away with intellectual property in the internet age. Like, I think it's just impossible to enforce with the internet. And I think that that's what they're trying. Part of what they're trying to do is they're trying to use draconian measures that were practiced in the past, which I pretty much think were bullshit in the past, but I think are very much bullshit now. Like, you just can't police intellectual property on the internet. And that's what they're trying to do. And they're trying to use intellectual property as a way to shut down freedom of speech, to shut down, to basically censor the internet. Like, if that's what they do, is like anytime anyone has a quote intellectual property gripe about something that's posted on YouTube or posted in a link on a website, they want to be able to go in without there being any sort of arbitration about it, to just go in and be like, just take this down because we're citing it as an intellectual property violation. And so yeah, there's that. There is, like you said, yeah, they're building in backdoors into websites like Facebook and YouTube, Google, all this stuff. The European Union just recently had a ruling where they decided that you have the right to be forgotten on the internet, which is complete bullshit. So now in the EU, politicians and people who have stuff that makes them look bad post on the internet, they can go to Google and cite a right to be forgotten claim and make Google take down stuff on the internet. Which the thing that I'm happy about seeing is that there's a backlash, and that whenever people see articles get taken down by politicians like what's his name, Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian Prime Minister, they basically go grab those articles and repost them over and over again. So ultimately, it's just making these people look worse. But at the same time, I think that kind of right to be forgotten and intellectual property arguments are complete bullshit in the internet age. And like you said, there's backdoors being built in to sites like Facebook and Google Plus, so that the government can basically make these private corporations turn over metadata and make like telecom corporations like AT&T and Verizon and Comcast turn over metadata without there being any sort of repercussions to the private corporations, which is also bullshit.
Yeah, megadata is something that we were working on at AT&T before I left, where we have some of the largest Oracle databases on the planet, where it's just petabytes and petabytes of personal information about people.
I'm sure. And I mean, the thing... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We were even working on... We have, the AT&T cell phones, and then there's AT&T Wi-Fi services, which was the company I worked for that does wireless networks at, like, Best Buy. And we started implementing stuff that would allow Best Buy employees in the back of the store to be monitoring web traffic. So if you go and Google your receiver that you're looking at and you see it's on Amazon, they say they can intervene and say, hey, we'll sell you this receiver for the same price on Amazon. But the only problem was they can also see any other web traffic that you're going to.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that a lot of the newer articles that are coming out, it's come to light that it's not just like the whole argument that they were making with the NSA is that, oh well, we're just collecting metadata. Like it can't be tied to individuals. It's just bulk data that we're collecting to keep an eye out for like terrorist activities and stuff like that. But the thing that's coming to light is it's not just metadata. It's all kinds of personal information that they're collecting, that they're just collecting under the guise that they're only collecting metadata. And they're building, like this NSA data center in Utah is collecting long-term data on individuals and building these like huge databases which show like everything you've ever done, every sort of communication, everything you've ever done online or through electronic communications. And they're building databases on individuals, so they have basically profiles, which, you can argue whether that's a good thing or not, but ultimately it means that they can go back at any time. If there's ever anyone who's a political dissident or is, rubs some politician the wrong way, they can go back and pull the profile on this person, and if they can find that that person has ever in the past committed any sort of illegal activity, they can go back and nail them for, you know, any random crime that the person like accidentally committed, because there's just so many thousands of laws on the books that basically people commit something along the lines of like 3 felonies a day just purely on accident. So it's complete bullshit. Or I mean, even if
the next time you're driving down the street, just think to yourself, how many laws am I breaking right now?
How many laws am I currently breaking just driving on the road? Yeah. Although, one of the nice things I like about Texas Liberty Radio is that in most weeknight evenings, they have Randy Kelton and Deborah Stevens have, I don't remember the name of their show, but it's basically a call-in show where they have people call in and about how to navigate the law to fight accusations, which are primarily, a lot of them are traffic violations. And the nice argument that they help people navigate is the fact that really, unless you are involved in commerce when you're driving on the roads, at least like in Texas, I think, I'm pretty sure it's in most states, unless you're directly involved in commerce, like you're a truck driver who's driving, you know, stuff for a company like Best Buy or whatever, or a trucking company, then a lot of the violations that cops try to pin on you aren't actually applicable. Like just because you're involved in transportation, if you're not directly involved in commerce, a lot of the violations that they try to pin on you aren't actually applicable to most citizens. And that's the thing that they try to help people navigate on their website. Like a lot of the times you can go in and argue, like, was I involved in commerce? Like, yeah, you arrested me for a traffic violation. Was I involved in commerce? No, then it doesn't apply to me. And so that you can get off on technicalities like that as long as you know how to argue the law on your side.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it's nice. Like, yeah, if you ever get a traffic violation pulled on you, you might want to go check out their website, or I know like at Brave New Books for like $20, I think every Sunday, they have a forum where you can go and, you know, you don't even have to call into a radio show. You can go ask them. They'll teach you about traffic law, and you can like go ask them about violations and how to navigate those violations in court. I mean, it's just kind of a good thing to know about if you ever get stopped for a traffic violation.
Yeah.
All right, well, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I'm going to see if this works. I'm going to share your song.
Mm-hmm.
Hear anything. Don't think it's screen share sound.
Yeah, I don't think there's any sound. That's the problem, is I need to get some speakers set up so I can just play these videos through my speakers until I can figure out how to get YouTube. YouTube, if you're listening, make sharing of videos easier, because it's still not working for me. Fix that now so I can share stuff from your site. Damn it. Alright, well, unless we got anything else to talk about, I guess we can call it a day.
Okay, I'm going to send us out on some music if I can get it to play.
Okay.
That wasn't it.
Okay, never mind.
Never mind.
Alright, it was meme time. They shared meme time. They talked about meme time, but they forgot about the meme time.